Ask almost anyone you know what dream vacation they want to take in their lifetime, and chances are that they will say Hawaii. Traveling to Hawaii is on just everyone's bucket list. The gorgeous scenery, aloha spirit, stunning beaches, and exciting activities. They are just a few of the reasons Hawaii is continually rated as a top vacation destination. Plus, it's also the perfect place to relax, unwind, and disconnect from your daily routine. The roads are framed by mountains. Oceans and greenery so lush and beautiful that it's hard to focus your eyes on one place for too long, for the fear that you will miss the next scenic attraction. Hawaii beaches and waterfalls are some of the most spectacular in the world. Every island is home to famous beach, with Waikiki Beach being one of the most notable. Some parts of Hawaii are so beautiful and look the same as they did thousands of years ago. It is very easy to find a piece of secluded paradise if taking the scenic route instead of traveling the highways. And above all, the Hawaiian culture shines through its people. From its cities to beaches, to hula demonstrations, to people speaking Hawaiian at the grocery stores, the island thrives on Hawaiian culture. The best part, other than its beauty, is the cuisine. It is like a stew, where all the flavors gathered from different sources complement and influence one another. But the ingredients retain their richness and individuality instead of melting into oneness. Nothing tells the story of arrival, intermingling, and reinvention of cultural and culinary traditions on the islands as much as the variety of cuisine that makes Hawaiian food stand out on its own. Hawaiian cuisine on the islands is ever evolving. The unique location of Hawaiian Islands make the food extremely diverse and different. It all starts with Hawaii's first people, the native Hawaiians. But to those who might not know where Hawaii is, well, Hawaii is a group of volcanic islands in the central Pacific Ocean. The islands lie around 2,000 miles from San Francisco. The history of these islands is quite interesting. The Hawaiian Islands were first settled as early as 400 BCE, when Polynesians from Marquesas Island traveled to Hawaii's big islands in canoes with highly skilled farmers and fishermen. Native Hawaiians knew how to live sustainably. They divided segments of each lands where people were given the responsibility to manage their resources. Those people had a genius for engineering, constructing vast irrigation systems to supply water to terraced farms. They also grew the canoe crops, which the first Hawaiians brought with them to the islands, including taro, sweet potatoes, bananas, sugarcane, and breadfruit. According to Polynesian mythology, taro was believed to be humanity's older brother. The taro plant reminded the people of their sacred connection to the land and was eaten as a way of respecting it. Taro was associated with the god Cain, who created the sun and water, and was revered as the giver of life. These legends portray the significance of this plant in the islanders' lives. Taro was consumed by hand-pounding the cooked root into a sticky paste, and this staple is traditionally the center of every meal. The ocean provided an abundance of seafood, but it was the Hawaiians' innovative construction of massive fish ponds that allowed them to manage a constant supply. These were all standard ingredients in a simple Hawaiian meal, and many of them appear on menus in classical as well as new innovations and alterations done by chefs of the recent times. Things did, however, took a turn after the arrival of Europeans. Not only did the island's habitats underwent a change, but many ingredients from outside world were introduced into the kitchens of Hawaii. Captain James Cook. He was the first European to step foot on the islands. He landed on the islands of Kauai in 1778. James Cook named the islands after the Earl of Sandwich. He returned to the islands a year later and was killed in confrontation with the Hawaiians. Between 1971 and 1810, King Kamehameha conquered other rulers and united the entire island group into one kingdom. Around 1820, the first Christian missionaries started arriving. Shortly afterwards, Western traders and whalers came to the islands, bringing with them diseases that devastated the native Hawaiian population. As time went on, in 1852, waves of contract laborers started to come to Hawaii to work on the sugar plantations. They brought with them traditional recipes and unique blends of ingredients from China, Japan, Portugal, Puerto Rico, Okinawa, and the Philippine Islands. With them came their rich culinary traditions. Some of the regional dishes introduced to the islands and infused with the local ingredients were Portuguese sweet breads and fried dough, Puerto Rican pasteles, the Japanese bento, for example. These dishes arrived long time ago, but are still popular today in Hawaii. As the number of native Hawaiians declined, other ethnic groups arrived, mainly to work on the plantations, of course. They were joined by immigrants from US and Europe and other places in the Pacific. Over the course of 2 centuries, people from all over the world had settled in Hawaii, creating a multi-ethnic society. American colonists controlled all the sugar-based economy in Hawaii, and they easily overthrew the kingdom and established the Republic of Hawaii. And with the incoming of people from all over the world and living in this small group of islands, it was truly a melting point of their culinary heritage, which transformed Hawaiian cuisine. During the same time, Hawaiians began leaving their jobs due to low pay and poor working conditions. Over the following years, more and more Chinese workers immigrated to Hawaii to fill these positions. After completing their labor contracts that lasted for around 5 years, many obtained land leases and cultivated rice in abandoned taro fields. Later, the number of Japanese immigrants started to outgrow the Chinese population, and their food preference changed. In the beginning of the 20th century, exotic tropical fruits, especially pineapple, played an important role in Hawaiian history. These were incorporated in the local eating habits and developed into an extremely popular and distinguished cuisine. Here are some of the Hawaiian foods that you absolutely cannot miss if you ever go to this paradise. Let's start with a simple dish that is considered as the national dish of Hawaii: Saimin. One of Hawaii's most traditional local foods, Saimin can be described as a Chinese egg noodle soup that was developed during the island's plantation era. You can actually taste how the recipe has been touched by Hawaii's history with different immigrant groups, primarily the Chinese and the Japanese. It is considered the supreme comfort food of the island, eaten at any time of the day. As more migrations followed, more ingredients informally entered the mix, like green onions, kimchi, Portuguese sausage, etc. It is so popular that you can even find this dish at McDonald's in Hawaii. The saimin is eaten very hot, with chopsticks or spoons, and the broth is then drunk from the bowl. Next up is poke. Well, just like the majority, if you don't know what poke is, well, the simplest definition could be diced raw fish. Poke means to slice or cut. So that's why almost all poke recipes call for diced fish. A lot of the times, poke is served simply as an appetizer with just the fish itself. In Hawaiian, it refers to chunks of raw marinated fish, usually tuna, which is then tossed over rice and topped with vegetables and umami-packed sauces. Spammusubi. Spam is a canned meat, mostly made of ham, and spam became increasingly popular in Hawaii after the World War II. It was sent to the troops stationed in Hawaii and it kind of spread from there. It was cheap, easy to cook, and it still is. It is actually one of the staple foods that people still love today. Spammusubi is a famous Hawaiian snack made from spam, rice, and nori. A slice of spam is placed on top of a block of rice, and the whole thing is wrapped in nori seaweed. Hawaii is a very outdoorsy type of place, and spammusubi is the ultimate portable snack. Pack it in your bag before you go hiking or bring it to the beach. Spammusubi does not need to be refrigerated. It's durable and it really hits the spot after outdoor physical activity. Kalihi Chicken. Kalihi Chicken is a grilled chicken dish in Hawaiian cuisine. Prepared by barbecuing chicken over wood and basting it with a sweet huli sauce. Huli has a cool history and an even better taste. Legend has it that a man named Ernest Morgado barbecued mass quantities of chicken between two grills, which were marinated in his mother's style of teriyaki sauce. When one side of the chicken halves were cooked, someone would shout huli, which means turn in Hawaiian. The original recipe is a trade secret, but today you can find variations of this recipe all over the internet as well as the island. It typically includes ginger, garlic, soy sauce, honey, maple syrup, and vinegar, white wine, or pineapple juice. It is truly a delight for your senses. Loco Moco. People in Hawaii enjoy Loco Moco for breakfast, lunch, dinner, or any time in between. It starts with a bed of sticky white rice and is topped with a hamburger patty, brown gravy, and a sunny side up. Loco Moco was created in the 1940s when some boys dining at the Lincoln Grill in Hawaii asked the waitress to serve them a dish that they could afford. The restaurant threw out the idea of rice, beef, and gravy, and the rest is history. Next are malasadas and croissantas. Malasadas are sweet, light, and fluffy Portuguese donuts. They have stayed pretty true to the original that arrived with immigrants from Portugal to Hawaii. These days, they are an everyday treat. The traditional malasadas are simple yeasted, deep-fried dough rolled in sugar, either round or occasionally square, but they never have a hole in the center. Rich with eggs and butter, the best malasadas manage to be both light and chewy at the same time. Served warm with a fluffy, springy interior and a crisp outside. Nearly every place specializing in malasadas does a cream and fruit-filled version. Pacific Beach House Hotel's executive pastry chef, Fenton Lee, came out with the Hawaii's spin-off on the Croissant Malasadas hybrid, which was called the Croissanta. Malasada certainly had a unique texture that is quite different from your typical American donut, with the malasada being much more glutinous and airy. And then you have the croissant, originally from Austria and France. made of yeast-leavened dough that's buttered and layered in a laminated fashion, resulting in a flaky and delicate texture. Take those two traits of the Croissant and Malasadas and combine them, and we have a croissada. Luau Stew. Luau Stew is a traditional Hawaiian dish made by cooking fresh luau leaves. Luau leaves come from the taro plant. It is a flavorful, saucy stew that you eat with rice and poi. Luau stew is made by cooking the luau leaves with water and a bit of salt. Some people add coconut milk and brown sugar to add more flavor. Others add onions, garlic, and ginger. People also add squid, chicken, or beef to make a meaty luau stew. Manapua. Manapua are steamed buns with a savory filling. They are Hawaiian staple and have history dating back when the Cantonese arrived in Hawaii. The buns are made with yeast and baking soda that are steamed with a pre-cooked filling inside. Manapua has its roots in China, where they are known as char siu bao. Char siu bao is a Cantonese dish made of steamed buns that are filled with a mixture of savory pork and various sauces. The pork filling is slowly cooked, diced, and mixed with oyster sauce, hoisin sauce, sesame oil, and sugar, creating a sweet and savory flavor that is synonymous with the char siu bao. Char siu bao arrived in Hawaii during the 19th century with the Chinese immigration. From there, they not only became Manapuas, but they also became Hawaiian staples. Hopia pie. Hopia pie is a widely popular pie found in Hawaii. It can have many different variations, but the most popular is probably the chocolate variation. Hopia is a Hawaiian coconut pudding or custard. Well, it is thicker than what most people would consider a pudding, and it has almost a gelatin-like consistency. Think of it like a cross between pudding and gelatin. Hopia pie is a no-bake cream pie made with coconut milk. Half of the custard is mixed with chocolate and layered into a flaky pie crust that has been baked and cooled. The remaining custard is poured on top. The pie is chilled and then topped with whipped cream. It is a true delight. Next up is a very popular Hawaiian classic, shave ice. Shave ice. Well, it does sound like some sort of a grammatical error, and it looks some sort of a colorful explosion. It tastes like some sort of a delightful treat. Japanese laborers contracted to work in Hawaii's sugar and pineapple fields brought shave ice with them. Plantation workers would use their machetes to finely shave the ice from large ice blocks, then pour fruit juices on the fluffy ice. This is perfect for hot tropical Hawaiian weather. Hawaii is a cultural melting pot, which is evident by the many foreign influences on its cuisine. Like the islands themselves, Hawaii's cuisine developed layer by layer, as various immigrant groups brought their own preferences, adding to the wonderful diversity of flavor. These ingredients like taro, breadfruit, rice, salmon sugar, coconut milk, pineapple, and many others have been mixed together over centuries to create a unique and delicious style of cooking and eating in the islands of Hawaii. Today, people from all around the world travel to Hawaii for its natural beauty, outdoor activities, and of course, its great food. Thank you so much for sticking around with me on this episode of Foodology. I had an incredible time talking to you. This is radio host Devansh signing off. Hope you have a beautiful and a magical day ahead. See you soon.